You're watching the Bronx Journal, the BronxNet television edition of the multilingual community newspaper, published by the students and faculty of the Journalism, Communication, and Theater Department at Lehman College. In print and on television, the Bronx Journal covers the issues concerning the people of the Bronx. Do you want to know what's going on in the Bronx? Are you interested in Bronx politics, sports, and entertainment? Are you interested in Bronx personalities? Do you want to keep up with the latest business or cultural trends? In the Bronx Journal, we have the answers. Now here's your host, the Bronx Journal's editor-in-chief, Professor Miguel Perez.
In celebration of Poetry Month, today we'll be taking a look into the art of Latino poetry with members of the Bronx's own Acentos Poetry Showcase. Our guests tonight are two Latino poets. Fish Vargas is the founder of the Acento Poetry Showcase, and Rich Villar is the show's host and curator. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having us. How you doing?
Tell us all about Acentos. We want the people of the Bronx to know what it is that you're doing in terms of poetry, and this showcase sounds fascinating. Tell us what it does.
Acento's Bronx Poetry Showcase was a reading that me and a friend of mine, Oscar Bermeo, founded 5 years ago. It was a place in which we felt we needed Latinos to go to and read their poetry without apology. It seems that too many times poets would read it, it would say, I have a poem, but I'm sorry it has Spanish. So we decided we needed somewhere to feel safe, to feel comfortable in our skin.
So without apology for being bilingual?
Bilingual, right. Latino, yeah.
No, it got started in March of 2003. Our first feature was actually a gentleman who hosted a reading series called A Little Bit Louder. And because he was so welcoming in his space, we decided to welcome him to ours. His name is Gila Charles Gonzalez. And we've been going for the last 5 years, and since then we've expanded our scope and focus to include Latino poets from all over the nation. But
when you say it's been going, what has been going? What do you actually do? You hold forums, you hold events, are you looking for a permanent poetry club?
Well, no. What we've been doing in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx is basically hosting an open mic and a poetry reading featuring poets of Latino descent for the last 5 years. And when I say Latino descent, of course, I'm talking about poets. They have included poets from the New Rican movement, Puerto Rican poets here in New York, Cubanos, Colombianos, Dominicanos. And in the last few years, we've been reaching out to some of our brethren out in California and our sistren and brethren in California and in Texas and in other places to bring them up to the Bronx and show that Latino poetry has a wider, wider scope than some folks may figure.
And how often does this happen? How often do you get together?
Like every second and fourth Tuesday.
Every second and fourth Tuesday.
That is correct.
At night?
At night at 7:30 at a place called the Bruckner Bar and Grill.
The Bruckner Bar and Grill.
And what kind of a turnout do you get?
On occasion, when we first started, 60, 70 people. During the hot summer months, maybe 15, 20 people. So it varies. It varies between who the feature is. We have a wonderful reader like Martin Espada who would come out and get maybe 200 some odd people. Or we can have someone maybe like me and get maybe 20 people. So just
so you're the founder.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Martin Espada, Pulitzer, you can win the Pulitzer. I've just started. So
yeah. But there was nothing like that in the Bronx. I mean, we all hear about the New York Poets Cafe, right?
Yes.
In downtown, and we figure, well, isn't that enough? But what is it? Is it enough, or do you want your own local place in the Bronx?
Well, let's define enough. The New York Poets Cafe movement started 35 years ago, and primarily involved just New York poets. As a Latino, there's so much more than just a New York poet.
Absolutely.
Between the Dominicans and Haitians, Mexicano, Peruvians, there's so much more than just Puerto Rican and New York. There's so much more.
But haven't they expanded too to include all these other groups?
They have a sort of multicultural bent to what they do. Actually on May 3rd, they're having a 35th anniversary show.
Yes.
And they're going to be honoring us as sort of the next generation of New Yorican and Latino poetry.
So we do work together.
We do work together, and we know Miguel and Carmen and Lois and all the folks there. But what they did, is, it's good, but I think it requires a little bit of expansion.
Yeah.
And expansion of what it means to be Latino in the United States, what it means to be a poet, and what it means to have these two languages mix and do these wonderful things in poetry. And it can't just be confined to the Nuyorican aesthetic.
So let's define Latino poetry. Is there a difference between poetry and Latino poetry?
Well, that depends on who you talk to.
Who you ask.
It depends who you ask.
Well, I'm asking you guys. So.
Well, yes. Certainly Latino poetry is poetry that is written by Latino Americanos. But I think in the last, especially the last 10 years or so, there's been a movement among poets to sort of move away from the easy narratives of home and identity and into more complicated issues of language and how second and third generation Latinos fit into this this melange of craziness that we call the United States. And the work is moving into a whole different realm of complication beyond those traditional topics. So.
And I'm sure for the audience, it must be kind of like inspirational to hear you guys, because what you talk about is the reality of what it's like to be a Latino in the United States in your poetry, right?
Sure.
We try our best to just give everyone a real good bird's eye view of who we are and what we do, to using what we call the proper poetic tools. Not many people actually get on top of the stage and read the perfect poem. Even us as poets and writers, you can't always find the perfect poem. But we hold workshops. I give out my number like you wouldn't believe. And you know what? If you want to learn poetry, you want to get dedicated, you want a passion for it, give us a call and we'll help you.
Which is what the Nuyorican movement, it's interesting you bring that up. The Nuyorican movement, when it first hit, Pedro Pietri especially was sort of the poet laureate of that movement.
Yeah. I knew Pedro.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Pedro was big on what is called the first draft phenomenon, and that's what he kind of described the Nuyorican movement as. And that's what we honor at the open mic. You bring your new stuff. You bring your untested drafts, and you read it among peers who are going to who are going to critique you, and give you the kind of support you need, and a safe environment that is not necessarily judgmental because they don't understand Spanish or they don't understand the nuances you come from or the references that you make. It's going to be
in a way, it's almost like a comedy setup. It's a comedy club where the guys stand up or girls stand up and try out their stuff among their peers. And
in a weird way, yeah. It definitely gets funny.
But could it be really called comedy?
No. In terms of comedy. We're not really stand-up comedians or anything like that. But what we have as far as
comparison.
Yeah, but yeah, it's basically a proving ground for newer work.
Yeah, we hold a very high bar. We said, literally, he came up with a refrain a couple years ago, and basically bring the new stuff. And everyone knows that when you come to our centers, you have to bring your newest untested work, because if we heard your poem 3 weeks ago, we don't want to hear it again. We want to see that you've been reading, you've been writing, you've been practicing. In other words, bring your best hard work to our centers. That's what we do. So we hold a very high bar.
Wow. Sounds interesting. Sounds fascinating.
Yes.
I mean,
We'd love to have you down there.
Well, I am. I'm definitely.